Okay, should the AFL bring back State of Origin? Now, we can all agree Rugby League has made a success out of State of Origin. AFL had an opportunity to challenge them and they got it wrong. And they were getting it wrong before they actually stopped playing State of Origin, many years before. But what is interesting is interstate matches have been played in various formats since 1904, which is 4 years before Rugby League plays its first organised league matches in 1908. The State of Origin format that they had was first played in 1977, which is 3 years before Rugby League had its first State of Origin series in 1980. Now, the State of Origin format, or formats, because they do make tweaks over the years, ran from 77 to 1999. In this period, what is interesting is they have some of these championships and carnivals. 1979, they have a Perth State of Origin carnival. It is very successful, so they decided in 1980 to take it to Adelaide, and they have the Adelaide State of Origin carnival. Now, they're both very successful, and then throughout the 80s, crowd numbers are good, TV viewership is really good, sponsors are keen to get involved, and they're doing really, really well. But also, State of Origin in Rugby League is doing really well, but they're both competing, and it's both a healthy competition. 1988, they have the Bicentennial Carnival in Adelaide. This is the high point for State of Origin. 1993, I think, is the high watermark, and when I was doing my research, I looked at this a little bit, and I'll come back to the 93 State of Origin Championships because I think that could be an answer. If the AFL wants to bring back State of Origin, what they did in 1993 could be a solution to the question, an answer to the question that I posed. And that is the high point. Now, since 1999, they've had the Hall of Fame tribute match, 2008, the AFLW one-off State of Origin in 2017 to coincide with the AFLW's launch in 2017, and of course, most recently and most importantly, in my opinion, the 2020 Bushfire Relief Match, the charity match. And this is where people start raising the question, maybe we should bring back State of Origin. It was a very well-received event, and you've got to understand the backstory to that if you're not from Australia or you don't follow the Australian media that much. Obviously, if you are an Aussie, you'll know all about the bushfires. But as a POM, as a Brit, I was watching this on the news, and those bushfires were absolutely devastating. Devastating. I mean, we've seen the flooding in recent years. There was flooding, terrible flooding after that as well. But we've seen the flooding, especially recently in Queensland and New South Wales. We've seen that cyclone just brush into southern Queensland, northern New South Wales. We've seen some devastating natural disasters since 2019, 2020. But as someone who has Australia on their bucket list, and I want to go to the MCG to watch an AFL Grand Final, I want to go to the Accor Stadium to watch an NRL Grand Final. They're both a week apart. One's a week before the other. I want to do both. I want them on my bucket list. I want to do them both in the same year. To see what was happening to Australia then was devastating. And to know the history of both rugby league and Aussie rules as sports in Australia, it's very community orientated. And a lot of small rural bush communities were absolutely gutted. So when they play this game, a lot of people in the fandom of AFL, the media of AFL especially, they start going, maybe we should bring back State of Origin. We should consider bringing it back. And this question's been brought up in some circles for the last 5 years. But let's go back to the 90s, shall we? So in the mid-90s, Rugby League is having the Super League War, and we've covered that to death on this channel, and we don't need to cover it. But Rugby League is in a basically civil war. The clubs are at war with themselves, the broadcasters are at war with themselves, the ARL, formerly the New South Wales Rugby League, and Super League are fighting over the future of the sport, and the sport nearly dies. Clubs go out of business, it's a horrible, toxic mess. But over the other side, AFL has just rebranded itself from VFL, and they've decided with their strategy we're going to go professional all across Australia, and we're going to expand the professional side of Aussie rules outside of the state of Victoria aggressively, and that's fine. So we've now got teams in Western Australia, South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, And as of right now, they want to have a team in Tasmania. That's the plan, to have the 19th team in Tasmania. And there's potential for have a team in the Northern Territory. They already play games in the Northern Territory. The Northern Territory regional league is really strong, and there's a lot of players who play in the AFL from Darwin and the rural communities in the Northern Territory, and it's a hotbed of player development. So Aussie rules is played across Australia, okay. And in the early 90s, there's the rebranding, and that is the domestic club strategy. But in the 90s, attendances and interests start to wane. So while 1993, the State of Origin Championships are really well received, after that, things start to go a bit wrong. So in 1994, this is the moment. The AFL Commission sit down and they look at a series of ideas and plans to sort of structure their series to rival what rugby league is doing. Because one thing that was going well for rugby league at the time was State of Origin. It was something that was still working, and then you got City Country Origin as well. That was the two Origin series that rugby league had. They were working. The club game was a mess, but rep football was actually working, and massive crowds, TV audiences, not just in Queensland and New South Wales, but nationwide. And crikey, they even took, in the 80s, a fourth State of Origin game to the US. Now, that didn't go down particularly well with the crowd numbers, but they were brave enough to do it. They were brave enough to take risks. And so the AFL Commission look at what rugby league are doing. And they're like, well, rugby league's doing a lot of things wrong, this Super League war, they're going to kill themselves. But this State of Origin, they've got it going better than we do. Why are they doing it better? And what happened in the 90s was they got a lot of things wrong. They didn't promote State of Origin very well. And with the AFL being the rebranded VFL and the expansion of the club game, the interstate rivalries sort of weakened. Which is weird, because they've actually been quite strong with rugby league. Even with expansion to New Zealand and the state of Victoria, they've never lost that Queensland-New South Wales rivalry. And now, yes, most of the clubs are based in New South Wales and Queensland, and most of the players come from New South Wales and Queensland, but when the NRL did start to sort itself out in the 90s and the 2000s, they never lost the interstate rivalry, regardless of what was happening with the club game. Now, another thing they got wrong was the high ticket prices. That put off a lot of fans who were working class fans, and it sort of priced out a lot of families and a lot of those on lower incomes. But then the time slots for kickoffs, which are mostly done for the TV audience, really hurt fans going to games. They were not convenient, and they actually didn't particularly work on TV compared to State of Origin in regards to New South Wales, Queensland and Rugby League. They got that wrong as well. One of the ideas the AFL Commission came up with was a State of Victoria team versus an allied team of all the other states and territories. Yeah, that didn't work. Now, 1999, attendance really started to bottom out, and it was the last time State of Origin was played as a proper regular series. We've seen the 3 one-offs since 1999. 2000 was a year where they just didn't want to play it for a year for the Sydney Olympics. Now, the Sydney Olympics takes place in 2000. The AFL season is shunted forward, and the gap, the week off they would have to play State of Origin disappears. The season's shortened, and it impacts the off-season as well when the grand final is played. They need to get the Sydney Olympics done. The Australian domestic media are very, very keen on this, and all the other sports in Australia accommodate the Sydney Olympics. They never resume State of Origin. And this is at a time when the NRL is in, a weak moment. The NRL is struggling financially. State of Origin is basically keeping the NRL going in regards to rugby league and rugby league finances. The club game is a mess. It's a mess financially, and the AFL is winning that domestic battle, and I think continues to win the domestic club game battle. The AFL Grand Final is the most watched team sport game in Australia on the TV. It slightly edges out the NRL Grand Final for TV viewership. However, the 3 State of Origin matches beat every other AFL game and every other AFL finals game. out of the top 5 watched things, 4 of them are rugby league. So while the AFL Grand Final tops the charts, barely in regards to TV viewership, the next 4 most watched sporting events on Australian TV are all rugby league. So there's an idea. Compete with rugby league for TV viewership, sponsorship, and rivalry is good. Rivalry is good. Now, the AFL, a lot in the AFL, in the governance side and club administration, and some in the fan base look down their noses at rugby league. And a lot in the AFL world will admit that. A lot in the AFL media have admitted that. But there are some things the NRL does better, and State of Origin is one of them. Taking games to Vegas. It's brave, it's outside the box. Is it necessarily better or worse? We can have a debate on that. I'm a massive fan of the NRL taking games to Vegas. I think it's been fantastic. It's a great experience, and the viewership domestically in Australia and now actually in the US backs up their bravery in taking games to Vegas. But Magic Round. The NRL, admittedly, Super League and Rugby League here in the UK came up with Magic Round first, but the NRL went, that concept works. And that they sent officials over and they went, how does it work? And Super League said, well, this is basically our bread and butter. This is our main event that does actually work for us, because Super League is financially a mess, but Magic Round works and fans love it. Fan engagement, you get all the fans from all the clubs and all the different communities engaging. And so Rugby League has Magic Round in both their 2 professional major competitions. The AFL sees this and copies. They call it Gather Round. That's just cheesy. And a lot in the AFL media have admitted the NRL and Rugby League do things better. Internationally, they do things better. So, if the AFL was to bring back State of Origin, the only feasible time you can do it, now with the size of the league, with the amount of teams they have, with 18, and try to get the season done, is at the end of the season. After the Grand Final, a couple of weeks after the Grand Final, you could play a State of Origin Championships. And the reason why I say that is Rugby League has the end-of-season internationals. So Australia this year, for example, are touring England playing 3 tests, which means New Zealand are playing the Pacific Nations and PNG in their Pacific Championship, which is not going to get massive amounts of TV viewership in Australia, let's be honest. New Zealand, sure, because New Zealand has a big Pacific Island population in Auckland, but outside of the east coast of Australia, not a lot of people will be watching. Honestly, the TV viewership will be less this year because Australia are playing England. There'll be a fair few Aussies who will be travelling to England to support, and there'll be a lot of Aussies from the East Coast who will be watching on TV if they're brave enough to brave the time zone difference. Which means, hypothetically, that is a good time slot to have something similar to the 1993 State of Origin Championships. That would be the perfect time to do it. You could have a multi-state championship, and that format could work. But unfortunately, and I will say this about AFL kind of hierarchy, I don't think the AFL are brave enough to do a format like that. I don't think the AFL leadership and the AFL Commission are brave enough to have an end-of-season State of Origin Championship, because the format will have to be drastically different to what Rugby League does, because the Rugby League format works for Rugby League, because you've only got 2 real states where most of the players come from, whereas in AFL you've got players from every state and territory in Australia, and you cannot just have Victoria play all the states in an opposition team, because you don't really get a rivalry there. It'd be just the state of Victoria versus everyone. Boring. But you've got rivalries between Western Australia and South Australia. You've got rivalries between New South Wales and Queensland, obviously. Tassie just gets ignored most of the time. So they're going to have a rivalry with a chip on their shoulder, being the little brother of Australia. Northern Territory gets overlooked a lot. You've got all these interstate and inter-territory rivalries that you could really sell in a championship. And it's not guaranteed that the state of Victoria is going to win every time. It's not, because there's enough players from the other states and territories to make really strong teams. Really strong teams. And so that's an idea that I've been thinking of, but I don't think Is it Andrew Dillon? Is it Andrew Dillon, the current CEO, who's replaced McLaughlin? I think it is. I don't think he's brave enough to go, we're going to do this. I don't think the AFL Commission are brave enough to do it. Whereas Rugby League, I mean, you look at Abdo and Volandis, especially Volandis, they've been brave with their Vegas idea. Now, we can agree to disagree on how successful or not successful that's been, if it's good or bad for Rugby League. Peter Volandis has basically said with Andrew Abdo, we're going to buy a stake in Super League, our rival professional league for players and fans. We're going to take a stake in that to strengthen the global brand of Rugby League as an international team sport, and actually grow the game internationally by working with the other professional league in the world. That, normally you would go, well, that's a rival league. Well, we want to be the best league, but they want to strengthen the sport. This is for the greater good, right? It's a risk. There's a massive risk involved. The end of season internationals, the NRL has taken a leading drive in getting the internationals played at the end of the year, because the IRL, much like many other sporting bodies, is pretty poor when it comes to organising things and governance. This is where I think the state of origin idea is there. Will the AFL be brave enough to bring it back? Because they mismanaged it in the 90s, the point where so the Olympics come along and they go, oh, we're only going to stop it for a year because of the Olympics, and then they never started it again. They just didn't bother. And they let an opportunity at a time when Rugby League was in crisis, and it was. In the 90s and the early 2000s, Rugby League at the club level and as a sport was in crisis. They did not take advantage of the rival code's weakness with state of origin at all. And you look at the as I say, the top 5 most viewed moments in Australian sport on the TV last year was the AFL Grand Final. Yeah, that's top dog, great. But then the next 4 are all Rugby League, and 3 of them are state of origin, game 1, 2 and 3. That has got I mean, even women's state of origin is now getting record viewership and record fans in attendance. Women's state of origin is getting more viewership than some AFL games on the TV. An established league that's been around since the VFL has been. The AFL are not being brave enough. And when they do come up with ideas, they're generally just copying what Rugby League's done, like Magic Round, Gala Round. Like, oh, they're going to Vegas. Well, we might consider going to America. But there's no facilities for them to play a game. Yes, there is an organised Aussie Rules League in the US, and that's fine, and there are, fans over there, but where are you going to play games? What facilities are you going to use? They haven't. They look down their nose at Rugby League, but then Rugby League and the NRL are doing things better in certain areas. Not every area, absolutely. There are areas where the NRL and Rugby League could do better, but the AFL, I don't think, with the current, commission and the people running the game, I don't think they're brave enough. I really don't think they're brave enough. So we'll see what happens, but I think they should. I think it would be a good concept to bring it back. You may get more casual sports fans going, okay. Because I'm more of a casual AFL fan. I'm not a hardcore. I'm not rusted on. I'm the type of sports fan that you want to attract to become a more hardcore, permanent fan who watches every game, week in, week out, picks a team to support and sticks with it high and low. But this is the problem. They're not really attracting new fans. You've got your rusted-ons, but I don't think they're really attracting many new fans to the product, really, if we're being honest. And the 2 expansion teams in Greater Western Sydney and Gold Coast Suns are crap. They've been heavily subsidised by the AFL just to make them relevant. They have pumped a lot of money in there. The AFLW is not a great product. The AFL has made a lot of mistakes when they could have kept a State of Origin series going and competed with Rugby League. But there we go. That's my views on should the AFL bring back State of Origin. I think they should, but I don't think they're brave enough. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below. I'd be very interested to hear from AFL fans about this. But from me, for now, thank you very much for watching. And I will have some more content for you all very, very soon.